Body cam footage was released over the weekend that shows the moment that the Ohio police arrested Chad Doerman, who is suspected of shooting and killing his 3 sons. Now, Dorman was arrested on June 15th at the property on Laurel Lindell Road in Monroe Township, Ohio, and has been charged with 3 counts of aggravated murder. Now, police were called to the property that day after receiving a phone call from a woman claiming that her babies had been shot. Now, the prosecutors alleged that the 3 children were discovered by first responders lying in the yard of the home. The Claremont County Sheriff's Office has not yet released the identities of the children, but stated they were brothers ages 3, 4, and 7. Attempts at life-saving measures were unsuccessful, and all 3 children died. Now, Dorman was arraigned on June 16th, and his bond was set at $20 million, a record for that particular county. The prosecutor said this is by far the most sickening, horrifying crime that he has ever seen, and the prosecutor can only imagine the terror that these little boys felt and experienced as their father, their protector, was actually murdering them. That's right. The Claremont County prosecutor said that during the arraignment, and prosecutor said that Dorman lined up his 3 children before killing them with a rifle, and according to court documents, state that Dorman confessed to planning and carrying out the death of the victims involved for several months. Prosecutors state that one of the boys was able to run into a nearby field, but was chased down by his father, dragged back to the property where he was shot. The body cam footage was released Saturday, and it shows 2 officers getting out of their cars and attempting to yell to Dorman. They repeatedly shouted for him to walk towards them with his hands raised, and he failed to comply and remained sitting on the property. As the police approached with their guns drawn, Dorman continued to sit there, and they noticed a rifle sitting next to Dorman. With gun drawn, police approached Dorman, and he refused to follow their instructions. They also noticed a small hunting rifle placed next to him. The footage then shows the officers apprehending Dorman and putting him in handcuffs. Now, Dorman appears to be calm and didn't resist being restrained in any way. While one of the officers moved Dorman, the other officers appeared to attend to the 3 victims. Now, at 4:15 p.m. on June 15th, the Claremont County Communications Centers received a 911 call from an unknown female who was screaming that her babies had been shot. At 4:18 p.m., a second 911 call was made to the communication center from a passerby who reported that a female juvenile was seen running down the road, stating that her father was killing everyone. This girl was later identified as Dorman's stepdaughter. Now, in the body cam footage, the suspect alludes to this by saying that his daughter ran to the fire department. "It is my stepdaughter." Now, the mother of the 3 children, a 34-year-old woman whose identity has not yet been released, was also found with a gunshot wound, and the gunshot was to her hand and was not believed to be life-threatening. Now, the suspect's father, Keith Dorman, has also spoken about this incident and said that the triple murder was absolutely just terrible and believes that his son just snapped. "I could tell in his eyes he's hollow inside. That wasn't Chad standing at the arraignment. That was not him." I don't know if it was financial. I don't know if it was mental. I don't know if it was work-related. I don't know. I can't talk to him. The suspect's father also defended him and said that while he is angry at his son, he remembers him being a super father. Okay. I get it. Don't want to beat a man when he's down, but you just killed your 3 children and tried killing a 4th stepchild. I'm going to go on a limb here, ladies and gentlemen. He is not a super father, okay? I hope he had a miserable Father's Day realizing what he did. And you can see in court when he's sitting there getting emotional and the district attorney is reading or stating the facts to the court about what took place. It maybe just kind of clicked that, yeah, he killed all 3 of his kids. This guy is Chris Watts-esque for sure. Not a good father. No, you're not a good father. I get it. Nobody wants to be judged at their worst moment, but when you kill all 3 of your kids, you're not a good father. I don't care what you did in the past. You're not a good father. Next on the docket, let's talk about Tiger King. And just when you think that someone appeared in this Netflix series, you think no one else could be charged, well, there is, okay? Now, during COVID, Tiger King became quite popular when people tried to pass the time, so to speak, during the quarantines. But the owner of the animal park in South Carolina, who is featured on that Netflix documentary, was convicted in Virginia last week of wildlife trafficking charges. And Bhagavan Antle, Bhagavan, Antle, A-N-T-L-E, better known as Doc Antle, was charged in October of 2020 with illegally purchasing endangered lion cubs in Virginia for display at the Myrtle Beach Safari, along with 9 misdemeanor animal cruelty charges. Now, a Virginia jury convicted him on Friday of last week of 2 felony counts of wildlife trafficking and 2 felony counts of conspiring to wildlife traffic. Now, Mr. Antle was cleared of all of the misdemeanor charges that he faced, and each felony count is punishable by a maximum of 5 years imprisonment, according to the district attorney. Mr. Antle will be sentenced on September 14th. Mr. Antle's daughter, Tawny, and Tillacam Watterson, who also faced misdemeanor animal cruelty charges, were found not guilty of all counts. Now, Mr. Mantle made frequent appearances on the Tiger King, that 2020 series that offered Americans, like I noted, a little escape from the pandemic, and it made us look at the big cat trade here in the United States. Now, the show's star, Joseph Maldonado Passage, known as Joe Exotic, well, he's serving a 21-year sentence in federal prison for a murder-for-hire plot that targeted Carol Baskin, an animal rights activist. She criticized Mr. Maldonado's Passage treatment of animals at his Oklahoma zoo and appeared on the Netflix show. Mr. Antle, who is currently facing money laundering charges in a separate federal court case in South Carolina, denied any act of conduct that could ever be considered an animal cruelty situation. That was a statement that he made when the Virginia charges were announced. Well, guess what? The jury disagreed with that statement. Now, Virginia law allows the trade of endangered wild animals, including lions, for zoological, educational, and scientific purposes and preservation purposes, only with special permission from a state board. What have we said, ladies and gentlemen? Ain't nothing legal till the government gets their cut. Apparently, you don't fill out the paperwork, you get charged. Mr. Antle's lawyer called the jury's decision not to convict Mr. Antle of the misdemeanor charges a significant victory against spurious allegations of animal cruelty. And the attorney said that the felony offenses from which his client was convicted amounts to failing to obtain a permit for otherwise entirely lawful activity, calling them nothing more than paperwork violations. One day after a grand jury indicted an Ohio man for numerous crimes in the execution murders of his 3 sons, Clayton, Hunter, and Chase, prosecutors expressed their clear intention to pursue the death penalty. Christopher Doerman was arraigned Friday morning, and he pled not guilty and was held ordered without bond in the murder case that prosecutors have called one of the most monstrous, craven, cowardly acts that will ever be their misfortune of seeing. Prosecutor declined to get into specific details so as not to jeopardize the capital case when asked about allegations that Mr. Dorman, Chad Dorman, had planned the execution of his kids for months. He did say he would seek the death penalty for Mr. Dorman and would seek the fullest extent under the law, which includes death. The prosecutors stated the following, quote, "I can't go into a whole lot of facts because this is a death penalty case, and my goal is to have this man executed for slaughtering these 3 little boys. It is an incomprehensible act of horror that he perpetrated on his family. Factually, I've said what I said on the record, and I'm going to stick by that," the prosecutor noted. And he said, "I'll let the facts speak for themselves. As I mentioned in court, he slaughtered his 3 children in the most brutal fashion you could possibly imagine." May know by now, if you've been following this case with us, Chad Dorman is accused of lining up his 3 sons, ages 3, 4, and 7, and executing them with a rifle even hunting one of the boys down at the property, gunning him down, the 7-year-old, from behind while the boy tried to escape, and then executed the victim when he fell. He allegedly ripped the 3-year-old from his mother's arms and then put a bullet in his head, the prosecutors noted. And prosecutors said last week that Dorman confessed to this horrific crime, and we brought you the body cam video that showed that Dorman was acting quite calm as he sat on the back porch of his house when the sheriff's deputies came to the scene on the afternoon of June 15th, just days before Father's Day. Like I said, he was sitting there with the rifle next to him while his 3 sons lay victims on the ground. On the other hand, we have prosecutors in the Brian Coburger case, which are much less decisive. On May 22nd, Brian Coburger declined to enter a plea to the charges at his arraignment, electing to stand silent, so the court then entered a plea on behalf of Mr. Coburger. This is not unusual and is not a big deal, but a lot of people are making it out to be a big deal that he didn't say not guilty. It means nothing. It's not uncommon for the court to enter pleas on behalf of a defendant. So, on that same day, May 22nd, a 60-day clock starts ticking for the Latah County prosecutor, Bill Thompson, to file a notice of intent to seek the death penalty against Mr. Coburger or not. So, Mr. Thompson has until July 22nd of this year to decide how he's going to proceed. Now, if this case is not a death penalty case, I'm not exactly sure what is. The DA has to take into consideration the desires of the victim's family, the likelihood a jury will convict and sentence Mr. Coburger to death if he is in fact convicted, and the prosecutor also has to consider any mitigation that the defense may offer to them to avoid the death penalty. Now, usually the death penalty is brought when the district attorney thinks that their case is a slam dunk for guilty. The weaker the case, the less likely death will be sought. We'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, the trial is currently scheduled to begin on October 2nd, but if this becomes a death penalty case, you can imagine that date is going to change and the trial date is going to get pushed out. As we've seen in the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell trials, a possible death sentence gives and requires the defense more time, not only to prepare for a trial, but to prepare mitigation, which is something that would spare a defendant's life if they proceed to sentencing on the death penalty portion of the case. Now, another case in Idaho where there are 4 bodies and no death sentence has been decided. So the man accused of shooting and killing 4 of his neighbors in Kellogg, Idaho, will not face the death penalty if convicted based upon a new filing. Now, Major John Kaler is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Kenneth Guadapi, Devin Smith, and Aiken Smith. Their ages range from 16 to 65. Now, the affidavit for his arrest, the police says that Kaler and his wife were upset because they allegedly witnessed Mr. Smith exposing himself in front of the bedroom window while Kaler's children were playing in the yard. The Kalers then began arguing with the Guadapis about the alleged exposure, and Kaler ended up shooting the family in their apartment. This is all pursuant to the arrest affidavit. It later states that he told the police that he just snapped. Well, the Shoshone County prosecuting attorney, Benjamin Allen, released a public statement and his filing with the court as well that said, quote, "After careful consideration and discussion with the victim's family, our office has made the choice to remove the death penalty as a sentencing option, which will set the path of the criminal procedure in this case on course as a non-capital first-degree murder. This decision comes as a result of careful consideration of the realities of a death penalty statistics within our state, as well as discussions with the family members of the victims involved in this tragic event. And Kaler is currently being held without bond, and a preliminary hearing has been scheduled now for July 3rd. So as you can see, different prosecutors, same number of bodies, completely different results. It's called prosecutorial discretion. Some people like it, some don't. If you get the benefit of it, you obviously think it's a good thing. if they give you the harsher sentence, well, you don't like that prosecutorial discretion. But it just goes to show you, and prosecutors have to consider the debate of the death penalty. Is it even moral, even if it's on the books? Because it is the ultimate premeditated murder, as many people argue.